I think for me, fondest memories of driving Mazda on track has got to be driving at Le Mans in the 787B. Did it in first 1990, but unfortunately we retired. But then coming back in 1991, just a lovely journey when I look back, because we had a few issues. I remember when we did some testing in Paul Ricard, but we got to Le Mans. There'd been a lot of people who put a lot of hard work in fixing the issues that we had. We qualified, I think it was about 12th or 13th, but we knew we had a car that we could push the whole way through. So myself, Volker Weidler and Bertrand Gachot, my teammates, it was a sort of a competition of not going as fast as we could. It was a competition of how far we could go with the fuel that we had. So we purely drove on the numbers that we had in the car to get that number down every time we got in the car. So the competition was a completely different scenario than I was used to. I was doing Formula One still at the same time, which was just pushing as hard as you could. And although we had to push as hard as we could, that fuel number was a very important factor. So rotary engine, brilliant engine to drive. You know, those four rotors are very, very, very smooth. The smoothest engine I've ever driven. Sort of a bit like driving an engine like silk, because any other engine I've driven, there's always a vibration that's there. But the 787B and the rotary engine was just a very, together package. And I think that was why we were able to push as hard as we could in the race. And then eventually the Mercedes had a failure, which allowed us to get and win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And it still shocks me now, still the only Japanese manufacturer that's won Le Mans. Brilliant. Yeah, driving the 787B at Le Mans in 1991, I think we went there. Were we favourites? No. Mercedes-Benz were the favourites, but we knew with Volker Weidler, Bertrand Gachot and myself that we had sort of three Formula One drivers, as we were at that time, that we were able to push all the way through the race. That's where we knew we had probably our biggest chance. We knew on a one-lap qualifying it was not going to compete, but we knew over that 24-hour period that we would be able to push it to the absolute max the whole way, because the rotary engine was just so reliable. We'd had a few issues in testing, but we got those sorted out before we arrived at Le Mans itself. And then it was being able to drive the car as fast as we could with the fuel we had, but having a little competition with the three of us in the car, just focusing purely on getting the best out of ourselves, not making any mistakes, which is a big important factor of Le Mans, but also being able to sort of work with each other to be able to produce the best of each of us. And then at the end of the day, it would give us a much better chance of being in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly what we had. I think it was about 21 hours. We were second. We've been second for quite a long while. The Mercedes had a problem, which is part and parcel of what Le Mans is all about, and we were in the right place to just carry on pushing as we had done from lap one. And that was what was, looking back, was absolutely amazing. From lap 1 to 3,600, whatever it was, laps that we did, we were able to just push all the way through exactly the same pace. And that was just absolutely amazing. But it was a lovely car to drive. Very, very silky smooth rotary engine. And the car itself, Nigel Shroud, who was the designer, had packaged a really nice, comfortable car for us to put ourselves in an environment with a closed cockpit. Very hot, I do remember, inside, but that sort of didn't really come into play. You sort of dismissed that and put that to one side and just concentrated on the job inside. And together as a team, Mazda Speed, who were running it, Ohashi-san, who was sort of the team manager, we had Jackie Hicks, who was given a little bit of experience, but we just drove, to be honest, beautifully through the race. We didn't make any mistakes. The team didn't make any mistakes. We did one pit stop for the brakes, which we expected to do two, so we were able to benefit from that time we would have lost in the pits. So overall, and then getting to that point where 4 o'clock you were the winner of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and I was very lucky because I was the man who was in that car. I didn't get to the podium. Unfortunately, I collapsed when I was before just as I got into the Parc Fermé, but a bit of dehydration. But that just shows how tough tough that race is. Very different than Formula One, but a real test of man and machine. Experience of racing the 787B at Le Mans 24 Hours, I think it was a whole family, from the team to the mechanics to the drivers to Hashi-san, who was the boss of Mazda Speed. I think when you put all that sort of together, everybody was at one with each other and everybody was able to work together. So we had a good team of mechanics, we had a good team boss who'd put those mechanics onto our car, and then we had 3 reliable drivers who were able to get the best from the car. So all in all, the package was just much stronger than anybody else, and it was an honour for me to be able to drive that iconic 787B. What was so special about the 787B? I think it was the ease that which it drove, and that mainly was down to the rotary engine itself. Very, very smooth, not very torquey, had a very, very long flat power band, and that enabled you as a driver to sort of really feel that power, ease it on without any problems, not being able to spin up the rear wheels, not damaging the tyre, and then having a problem through the stint that you were on. So that was one positive thing. But the comfort factor of where you actually sat in the seat to where the steering wheel was, to where the pedals were, and of course we had a gear stick as well, and that was something that I think it just enabled you to have that comfort factor. Le Mans 24-hour race, you've got to have a comfort factor. So I think when you add the engine, very, very drivable, very, very smooth, which is actually physically a much nicer thing to have, and then the comfort of the car itself and the handling that it had, it was not a very aggressive car to drive. It was something that everything complemented each other, from the drivers to the car and to the engine itself, and eventually that enabled us to win that very important 24-hour Le Mans race. I think what made the 787B so special, I think, was the package of the drivers, was the package of the car itself, the comfort factor, and it was the package of the rotary engine that was just a silky smooth engine. You package that together, that's why you get the 787B winning Le Mans 24-hour race. The Friends of MX5 initiative is an interesting one, because there are people out there that love their motorsport, they love their driving of cars, but more importantly, there's a lot of people who love driving an MX5, and this initiative allows that sort of dream to happen, because they can go on iRacing, which is where they're able to go online and drive the online car as fast as they can, and the competition is going to be very, very, very high, and I think that's where that racing sort of influence comes into effect, competition. So once they sort of get through the sort of, let's say, the qualifying stage, they're then finally able to drive a proper car, a Mazda MX5 Cup car, which then will give them the opportunity to possibly have a sort of a career in motorsport. And why not with Friends of MX5 and driving an MX5 Cup car? And of course then there is the global MX5 Cup car that's in Laguna, Seca, which eventually that's where they'll have their chance to race. And what a place to be able to race a race car on the Mazda circuit there in Laguna, Seca. It's just an awesome place to be able to sort of have that first opportunity. And it's great that Friends of MX5 have been able to give that chance to a good few thousand people, 60-odd thousand people in Europe, a chance of driving a race car. So it's a wonderful initiative, something completely different, but I think it would be interesting to see exactly who and how fast they are, and I think it would be quite surprising how good the drivers they will be. Driving a global MX5 Cup car at Laguna Seca, it's a wonderful track. It's a very flowy track, and what I have learned with the MX5, the way you have to drive it, you have to be very, very precise, very, very smooth, and if you're able to do that, you'll get much more lap speed out of the car, and I think that's going to be probably a big challenge. There's a lot of people who sort of grab it by the scruff of their neck, they'll be very, very aggressive, but as you do that, you're going to get penalised by having a slower lap time. So the precision is something you've really, really got to concentrate. And I think that concentration will actually come from the iRacing, because that is a very similar thing. The concentration's got to be very high on that. And then I think driving a car around the Laguna Seca racetrack is going to be very, very similar. You get that flow, you get that momentum, and with that momentum you get that speed. So being precise, not sliding the car, not understeering too much, but also not sliding with oversteer as well. Just being absolutely pin perfect on the track. I think the biggest challenge of driving around Laguna Seca is you being able to push yourself to the limit. The track is quite a daunting prospect, I think, when you look at it. There's a lot of undulations, there's a lot of driving over brows. You go into the corkscrew, you can't see the corkscrew until you actually arrive on the other side of that brow. So once that commitment starts to come in, I think that's where your confidence will grow. But that's where you've got to believe in yourself. Believe that once you get over that brow, you're able to brake very, very hard, get the correct gear to turn left, to go down the corkscrew itself. And I think that's going to be something that for some people it may be a little bit daunting, the way that corkscrew is, for example. But I think by being able to challenge yourself, push yourself to those very, very limits, you'll be actually in a much better situation, because you're actually in control of the situation. If you let Laguna Seca, the corkscrew, take over control, then you have no chance. So use the experience you've had of learning the track on the iRacing game, and then you need to apply that actually when you get in the car. You've got the steering wheel, you've got the feedback, you'll have the feel, so you've got to be in control of it. Don't let it control you. Well, I think whoever gets through and has this chance of the Friends of MX5, and when they get that chance in the Global Cup car in Laguna Seca, it will be their real proper first time on a racetrack with other people on the racetrack. I remember when I did that, the thrill factor was huge. It really gave me a massive buzz, and I think it will equally do exactly the same thing. It's a challenge. It was a challenge for me, and I was always having to sort of push myself to the limit. I was always having to learn. I think that learning is something you're always going to be taking things from what you do in the car itself, but also what you see the other guys doing on the track in front of you, or maybe even in another practice session. So it's been able to take all that information and then actually bring it into one sort of central location, and then apply it through your hands and your fingertips, tips of your toes, through your hips, and then obviously getting your brain in the right mode to be able to just package it all together to get the best from you. But the thrill factor I got from that first time was something, it was just a big smile from ear to here, because it was just something I'd always wanted to do, and then being able to do it, and then actually do it well as well. It just gives you a big thrill, but it never stops there. You always want more. You're always pushing yourself more, and I think that's exactly what Friends of MX5 will be able to do for the guys who get through to drive, an MX5 on racetrack. Secret to the MX5 success, it's been over 20 years that people just love what it is. I think they like the shape. I think they love what it gives them when they're actually having that driving experience. Now that's on the road, but that's also on a racetrack at the same time. And I always remember seeing and it must have been sort of a Mazda UK day out at the Nürburgring. And I remember there was this sort of 70-year-old couple driving their MX5 around the Nordschleife, and the lady was there, and it was almost like she had a little picnic hamper on her lap, and the husband was driving, and she was offering the sandwiches as they're driving round the Nordschleife. The roof was down, but it was lovely. It was brilliant to see, and it was. I think that's what the MX5 has been able to give people, is sort of that freedom to get out there, rooftop down, and get out there and drive something that is just very easy to drive from one side, but it actually gives you a lot of positivity and excitement, I think, from driving it behind the steering wheel itself. And I think that's something with the changes of the car that have happened over the years, it's always got better. and I think that's always drawn people into to want to have an MX5, and that's on the streets, but it's also on the racetrack as well, because the amount of sort of MX5 race series there are scattered around the world is absolutely fantastic. So it's just a very popular car, and I'm not surprised driving one like I have now.